but it needs to be done.
Jonathan?
Thanks. I actually agree with what you've said there so far. I think there are quite a few things we can do to control school costs without really negatively impacting the program. I've been leading the school committee's efforts to review and implement the citizen advisory group's recommendations on school costs, which really focus on a range of solutions to our budget challenges. As I mentioned before, energy costs are one thing that we can do that really do not affect program. One thing that the city has done, and the school committee and myself have pushed for very strongly, is to go with this ESCO program where we bring in a third-party contractor who can finance and implement major energy-saving measures in our buildings. Right now we're working in Day Middle School, finishing up a program which is going to save a large amount of money. Over the next several years, we're going to save millions of dollars in energy costs, and also we're going to reduce our carbon footprint and emissions from our buildings. The organization Stand for Children, of which I'm a member, gets a lot of credit for pushing the ESCO program here. I mentioned a couple other things I just go through quickly. In the area of special education, this year we have approved innovative new programs to reduce spending on out-of-district placements through new and enhanced services in our schools where we're providing in-district services such as the alternative high school and now an enhanced elementary stabilization program where kids do not have to be placed out of district in a more expensive setting, and we can provide better services for the children here in Newton. We're doing several other things this year. We're bringing in interns and staffing from Lesley College, from Northeastern, from LaSalle, and we're beginning to work on a partnership with Boston College, which is going to be a very important part of the future. We can use interns in a productive manner and help save money. On the food service issue, right now we subsidize the food service program by over $1 million a year to keep our students fed for lunch. And the school committee has voted, and I supported it, to examine the private option through a bid process. A couple other quick things I'll just mention is we've revised our fundraising policy on the school committee. Our hope is to bring in much larger amounts of private funds for big-ticket items and to make improvements in our schools. In addition, the Newton Schools Foundation has a $2 million program to bring technology into our classrooms. And the other one thing I'll just quickly mention is collaborative programs with other municipalities. Newton is big, but we can still cooperate with other cities and towns and save money on projects.
Dan?
So I have one question, and it relates to a question we'll maybe get to later or maybe not, and maybe we can short-circuit it. But you mentioned the CAG report and you mentioned the food service program. I really was struggling when I read the CAG school cost report when it was first produced, and I went to the presentation of it. How is it that the CAG had to ask and dig for information like we're subsidizing the lunch program by $1 million a year? I don't understand. Why is that now an event to go react to that? Why wasn't that something that we were already working on?
Well, actually, all the information has been provided on a regular basis to the school committee in terms of what the subsidies are. We get great financial information from the school department, from Sandy Gurian and her team. The subsidy has been increasing steadily over the last few years due to costs as well as declining participation in the program. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. And as this continued on, the newer members on the school committee were much more interested in looking at a private option. And so that is what we voted to do. Many years ago, actually 8 or 9 years ago, the school system partially privatized the operations, or at least the management of the system. And the system was deemed to have failed during that time period. Many people did not want to go back and relook at the private option, but many of us did, and I voted to pursue that. So it is something that's certainly been on our radar screen, something that we've been watching carefully, and many things that the CAG recommended were things that we told them about. We put in front of them saying, here's the things we're working on, and they put a lot of those kinds of big-ticket items into their report.
All right, let's see. It seemed like there was an awful lot of having to pull. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I wasn't on the CAG, so I don't know the details, but
Yeah, not from us,
that's,
but
that's certainly the feeling that was out there for a while.
The next question goes to Jonathan.
Yep.
What is your opinion of the current state of the mathematics curriculum at the elementary and middle school levels? What, if anything, do you think should be changed?
Good question. The math program here in Newton, and math programs all across the country are always somewhat controversial with parents. People have recollections of how they were taught math, and things are often taught a little differently these days. Overall, math scores here in Newton are very high. In Massachusetts is the highest math scores in the nation, and our Newton high schools and many of our Newton elementary schools have some of the highest scores in Massachusetts. So if you look at the SAT scores, we are right up at the top in terms of math. If you look at many of our schools on the MCAS scores that were just released this week, our third grade math is within the top 20 in the state, our fourth grade math as well in the top 20 in the state, and the Ward School, out of 966 schools, the Ward School is number one in the Commonwealth. And many of our other schools, Zervis, Mason Rice, Burr, Horace Mann, also scored way in the top 5%. That being said, I think it is the role of the school committee to continually ask questions about curriculum. We have parents who are concerned about our math program, about the ability of the everyday math program to succeed with all of our students. I have similar concerns, and it's something the school committee needs to continually ask the specialists and the superintendent to review the program. And we've had numerous presentations in the last year or two. It's something that I would like to continue to review over the next year, and I've asked the interim superintendent to do that. There are many things that the Everyday Math program did not originally do. There's a third edition out right now that has much more focus on the basics, the core basics of mathematics. I think that's a good thing. And I'll
Okay.
turn it over to Dan.
All right, so
Your question.
Okay, so I think I got to remember what the question was. Okay, I think the state of the curriculum right now is that it is improving from where it was a few years ago. I know from my own children going through elementary school, my oldest, who's in 8th grade now, had a very different experience than his sister, who's in 4th grade now, and his experience was worse. And I've talked to a lot of the teachers about what they've done and what they've changed since then. Yeah. And the word augment is almost the first word out of their mouth. Mm-hmm. So they have learned how to augment the curriculum, and it needed augmenting. And I agree with you, math is controversial, yeah. Right? I mean, and you can go out and talk to the math teachers. And So the challenge for us is that we need to make sure that we're offering something that really does work. Everyday math, I think, didn't work for a while. And some of our students lost some time. I mean, those are the time that they lost with that program when it wasn't working is time they're not going to get back. And, my son struggles with things today that he shouldn't be struggling with because of that, and I can see it. I'm glad that for my two daughters that it's improved, but I'm saddened that it had to be that bad for that long. Yeah. Middle school math, especially 6th and 7th grade, I think, is in worse shape. I think the impact math curriculum, and especially the textbook, is very poor. And I don't know if you've personally looked at it much, but the textbook itself is not useful. The kids don't use it. The parents can't help the kids using it. And I've talked to many parents who have the same problem. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed, and I don't think we can wait. I think we should be piloting other curricula. I think we should be talking to the math teachers, find out what they think we should do, and we should start doing it. And we have 4 middle schools. We can pilot, right? We have 16 elementary schools we can pilot. So that's kind of where I think it is, where I think it needs to be. And to the point about the test scores, you're absolutely right. We have a very strong performance at the high school level. We've had some kids struggle when they make the transition out of middle school into high school because of the deficiencies they've had in middle school. The only other point I'll make is I think we have a lot of parents who are using that word augmenting also. and they're augmenting through tutors, and they're augmenting through math schools, and there's a rich business in Newton of augmenting our schools in the mathematics area.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a business that the schools should be taking care of and not leaving to the private sector.